Hi everyone, my name's Stephanie Hopper. I'm the Director of Development Solutions at Capfinity and joined today by my fantastic co-host Celine Floyd, who will introduce herself shortly. A few words on Capfinity for those of you who don't know us so well. We're a global business based in various locations around the UK and across the US and also Sydney, Australia. And we've been helping organisations to find candidates, develop their employees and transform their business around our USP of strengths-based assessment and development for over 16 years now. Celine and I both work on Altitude, which is our much loved Capfinity's leadership proposition, and it's a market-leading method of assessing and developing your leaders through their strengths.
Thank you, Steph. As I say, we are delighted to be here today for our 10th episode, and we have two really fantastic guests to join us. Today's focus of conversation is on transformation, so I know it's going to be a really fascinating 30 minutes. As Steph said, Celine Floyd, I am the Director of Leadership Assessment at Capfinity, and I specialise in the assessment of leaders for internal promotions and lateral hires, and from a purely kind of developmental perspective. So, yeah, wonderful as always to be here. You've probably already heard enough of Steph and I think it's time to hand over to our two fabulous guests to introduce themselves. So if you may, ladies, just tell us a little bit about yourselves and perhaps a little around why you're passionate about leadership and the topic of leadership generally. I will come to Tanya first. Tanya, hello.
Thank you, Celine. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so my name is Tanya Mohamoodally. I work for British Airways. I was thinking last night about my introduction, and I realised that I've totted up over 20 years of experience in HR, and it made me feel really old.
No.
Honestly, I thought, oh, God, okay. So I've been in HR, or the people function, if you like, for over 20 years. I started my life actually in local government, and then moved into private after probably about 3 or 4 years being there, and predominantly my career has been in pharmaceuticals, which has been really interesting, very exciting, very dynamic and quite fast moving. And then I decided that I wanted to break out of HR and try something more commercial, to get some commercial experience. So I worked for a particular pharma at the time, and they gave me the experience to start looking at org design and development. And I've been doing that now probably for about 10 years, maybe 8-10 years. And I particularly love leadership because it's the behaviour side of it, and it's the behaviours that can make or break an organisation and a culture and so many different parts of the organisation. That's what fascinates me. And when you get it right, it has massive implications, positive implications, but when it's not, it also has bad implications as well. So that's basically why I'm quite fascinated about leadership.
Thank you, Tanya. Very high stakes work, absolutely. Thank you, Mia. Hi.
Hi everyone. So Mia, I work at BT. I've been at BT for a couple of years. Actually, just like Tanya, I was racking it up, I think 20 years-ish in corporate life. I started actually more in a hands-on development role. So I've always been really within digital. And I've kind of run and worked within various guises of digital experience teams, so both designing, building, connecting with strategies, sort of defining experience through the digital channel. So had lots of fun and I kind of worked in different roles throughout, and increasingly moved more and more into a leadership role through that journey. Joining BT, I joined the digital team leading user experience design, so very much in the detail, very much in the kind of tactical experience that people see and feel, which is fascinating. We do a lot of user research, spend a lot of time watching people, observing them, and hopefully improving life with BT. And then kind of more recently, I moved to a new design team, which I think really connects well with this theme of transformation. We are focusing more holistically on design of experience, so not just kind of down to an individual touch point, but actually holistically, how do you change the way that a business gets things done? So kind of activities around service design, process design, business analysis, and really kind of harnessing the power of that to transform, I guess, what's under the hood of the company. So different angle, different perspective for me, but really, really fascinating. And so I guess just generally about leadership, I love the point that Tanya made about behaviours. And I think for me, it's really similar. And actually, one of the first sort of points to really talk about as we get into this, I think, is about cultural readiness. For me, it always starts with that. To be successful, how are you going to make sure that you've created the conditions within your organization, within your team, and as leaders, that's what the part we can help with, to make people kind of in the best frame of mind and readiness to do transformation successfully. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you both. So I think, it's fair to say that pre-2020, Celine and I probably never had a conversation with a client where they didn't mention the word transformation in some guise. It was always there. People were always talking about a need to change, whether that be, the digital transformation that everyone's had on their sort of roadmaps forever, really, or whether it was maybe changing a process or, an approach with products or clients or the employee experience. I think it goes on and on and on. But my experience of those was quite often those changes happened at a really slow pace. And, there was this constant frustration at how slow it was to make things happen. And then I think last year happened and showed us, I guess, what can happen when the drivers of change are urgent, and I think back to the webinar we ran with the NHS a little while ago. And we had the CEO of Great Ormond Street, and he said, they'd had this whole thing about virtual appointments. It had been on their strategy for like 5 years, and no one had a clue where to start, and they just couldn't make it happen. And then within 2 weeks, they were doing it, and, they will never look back. So incredible, isn't it, when the drivers change, I think, and how that happens. So what I'd love to do is just start with a general question, because you've got such varied experience on transformation. And Mina, if I come to you first of all, I suppose over the course of your career, what have you learned are the keys to successful transformation within a business?
Yeah, so that last point, really, I think cultural readiness for me, I've been in a couple of big corporates who have done humongous transformations, and BT are in the middle of one right now. Super exciting to see the rule book being rewritten as to what this organisation is and how it does business. We're all really up for it. I think obviously the reality is it's extremely difficult to do and slow and complex. So I think that cultural readiness piece, and actually my previous organisation, I think one of the learnings that I had there was, and I don't know if this was actually deliberate, but when I previously worked at Thomson Reuters, and they also did a big digital transformation a little while back, and they're probably still doing one actually, because these things have several waves, right? But that particular sort of wave of transformation, ahead of that, the company had actually engaged in quite a deliberate cultural transformation program that the whole organization was engaged in at different levels. And it was really about, to me at least, what I took from it was that it was about getting everybody into the right state of mind. And whether or not that was deliberate for the transformation that lay ahead, I don't know. I like to think it was. But certainly on reflection, it felt like the right thing to do at the right time. Because what that program really tackled was helping people bring down some of the natural barriers to change. So it was really addressing the natural fears that we just have as human beings, not as employees, but just as humans, helping us confront some of that and realize that actually we all feel the same way, even people at the top of the company and right all the way down to the bottom of a company in terms of the hierarchy have different ways of that manifesting. So how are we going to tackle that? Let's help each other. Let's build the relationships. Let's build the behaviors. So we heard phrases like assume positive intent, and that one really stayed with me. So often we go into a situation and we think, oh, trepidation, this could be something a little bit nervy, I should be worried about this. And we started to positively coach and encourage people to enter a conversation with a positive mindset, assume a positive intent behind whatever that person's motivation is. And you did really start to feel like the barriers were coming down. And that's such a gateway to firstly creating change, but I think also sustaining it, right? Because people feel good about what they're doing, they're bought into it, and they don't take it personally. This isn't about personally disrupting you or your life. This is about buying into that bigger connected initiative. So there's so much I could talk about on that really stuck with me. And I think coming into BT, we're doing similar things. I would say I'm part of a leadership program that the company are currently rolling out around conscious leadership. and how you apply the principles of conscious leadership to running teams, and certainly exploring themes around gratitude, curiosity. How do you build that into the way that you behave as a leader, and also how you can obviously communicate with your team and build those kind of behaviors. There's some really, really good stuff. And I think the two have to go hand in hand, because you wouldn't run a marathon without doing quite a lot of training to get into that marathon. You'd be doing little mini runs, right, to get there. And it's the same. You can't start from cold. You've got to have people kind of warmed up and ready for what lays ahead. And it's going to be bumpy, and there's going to be a lot of ambiguity and a lot of frustration. So what's going to get you through that is a positive workforce that are ready and open and understanding, sort of fundamentally. I'm making that sound like it's a utopia solution. I know it's not that easy, but it goes a long way. That would be the first thing. Second thing, which is kind of tied to that, they're all kind of connected themes, is diversity inclusion. And I know this is a wider topic, but the reason I think it's so important to transformation is that, just to really, I don't know if anybody's read this book, but if you haven't read this book, you should read the book Rebel Ideas by Matthew Syed. And the first chapter, he talks about collective blindness. And it's so compelling. And although the example that he talks about, actually he talks about how the FBI and the CIA actually failed to connect the dots around the 9/11 tragedy. But there's a whole kind of run up to that. And when you start to unpick the story, really what happened was that institution had some brilliant, intelligent people. It had rigorous hiring. It was, really hiring some of the best, but they were all cognitively the same. And I think what starts to happen is, it's not that those people aren't amazing, they are, but they can't be at their best if that's the only kind of thinking that goes on in an organization. So I kind of use that in my mindset when I think about my team, especially as a design team, right? Because we're there to define and solve problems. That's actually very much what we're supposed to do as our day job. So to have a diverse team is a superpower, because you're going to get so much different perspective within a team like that. And I mean the typical kind of diversity inclusion conversations around race and gender and sexuality and all that kind of stuff, but I mean actually also the cognitive and cultural social backgrounds. We don't need everybody to go through university to be a bright spark, right? We have all different ways of gathering talent. So for me, if you're going to enter into a situation where you want to take on some of the biggest, scariest challenges, and transforming a big global corporate is all of that and so much more, you need a lot of different thinkers in the room. So I really think, for me, diversity is the other one that just, it goes with the territory. Critical. And then the third, and the third one, I guess, just I want to give Tanya some time on this one as well, is, and it sounds really obvious, but it's so hard to land, is a really clear strategy, North Star. Where are we going and why? And I'm pleased to say there's a really clear strategy and purpose that is just a few lines that you can just, you just know it off the top of your head. It's synonymous with what we do and how we think. It's starting to become really connected to that cultural piece, right? So those three things will start to kind of work together. But what's really important is if everybody understands it, number one, then you can land it, number two, and people can actually remember it, because there's so much to remember. And, I think, I can't remember the exact example, but I remember reading an article sometime last year where a CEO had done a floor walk of an office, and he stopped by desks and he said to people, tell me what you think about our strategy. And people didn't know what it was. They couldn't remember it. And it's not surprising, because there's so much to remember all the time. So I think keeping it really simple on the strategy, really clear, really intuitive, that people can buy into that. And then obviously from there, really just disseminating clear individual, we use OKRs in my team, but objectives and key results that make sense to people in their roles, so they know how they're contributing to moving towards that goal. Again, that will sound really obvious to everybody, but I think if everybody reflects on their own experience, it's so hard to do successfully. So that would be my other one, is to keep everyone, because it's a long haul, right? Transformation is not going to get done quickly. So you need to have a really good start and keep plugging away towards that.
Well, unless it's 2020, then it might get done quickly, Mia. Great, thank you. Yeah, I think that line of sight is really important, isn't it? As you said, to the North Star for people. So Tanya, over the course of your wonderful career, what have been the things you've learned are really critical to successful transformation?
So I can completely concur with what Mia said, especially around the piece about trust. And you said to me about positive intent and coming at change or transformation with that kind of trust perspective. If you've got a culture of trust, you're a little bit onto a winner and you're off to a good start. But if you haven't, then you really do need to pay attention to building that culture of trust to ensure your transformation is successful. I think what I've seen before as well, Mia, I heard you talk about all the different interventions that can be done, and having done something similar in the past in other organisations, and you think you're doing really well, and you suddenly look back and think, why isn't everyone coming with us? I don't get it. And what I've noticed is around about the whole commitment piece. So it starts at the top. So you can't really go through transformational change without having the CEO completely all over it and immersed in it. He or she can't delegate it. None of the senior leadership group or the board can delegate it. It's got to come from them first. They have to be fully immersed in it. And what I've seen in the past is that if people can see that, then you tend to get more traction and people start to say, okay, right, there's commitment here. They really do mean this. And to your point, Mia, there has to be the shared purpose and the values, etc., so that people know, okay, we're going on a journey. I know it's here. It's going to be a bit of a rocky road, but there you go. And then for me, it's all about, it starts there, and it's about the leadership, role modeling as well. And I find it fascinating. Again, I was saying about the behaviours, how you really think that you're on track with some transformation, and all of a sudden, if you're not managing your stakeholders properly, somebody is at a very senior level thinking, I'm not buying into this, or something or another. And all of a sudden you kind of go off track. And I think the stakeholder management and making sure that your leaders are really demonstrating the behaviours and role modeling behaviours that are required is absolutely essential in order to get transformation even off the ground to start off with.
Absolutely.
And I think leading on from that is really paying attention to your leaders and your managers. So it's not just about the top level. It's then about how do you take it down to the middle management as well. Because I have found in the past that they do find it particularly unsettling if they're not that involved. And they really do need the time and the space to understand what the change is and to get their head around it. And they need investment, if you like, whether it's a particular type of training or just time from their senior leader to be able to take them on that journey, if you like, and give them space to learn new skills, do things differently. And just having that time and space to develop, because otherwise the change will just go so quickly, and then the culture isn't changing because none of the leaders and the managers are changing with it. And technically you might be ticking off boxes, but actually nothing's really changing.
I think you said a couple of episodes ago, Steph, around as a leader, it's easy to forget that you've had advance notice of what's coming. And so then at the point that you're communicating, you're kind of taking that for granted, right? So yeah, this idea of giving people time because they've got to catch up with you. And I think it's quite easy to forget that you have this advance notice. Okay.
So often, right, we're going through this transformation. There's been a team of very senior people in a room that have decided what the North Star is. This is what we're going to do. And then when they go out there and say it, and they're like, why is no one getting this? It's because you've been talking about it for 2 months.
Exactly.
You've got to remember that this is the first time they've heard it. So you need to give them time.
Yeah. And often also... Go on, Mia. No, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think one thing that I saw done really well again in previous organisation was that when it came to rolling out the sort of cultural change programme, sort of on the ground, it became a bit of a viral thing that was a teach the teacher type scenario. So although that it kind of had started, I guess, in a more senior part of the organisation quite quickly, there were workshops being run by everyone and anyone. Everyone was sort of kind of bought into it, and it became very flat, hierarchically. It wasn't about that anymore. It was about us all singing from the same song sheet. I know I'm making that sound really utopian, but it actually was. It was really positive.
I've experienced that as well in a previous role where we had a cross section throughout the whole organisation that were going to drive the transformation, and it sounds like utopia, but it works. It honestly works. You've got someone right from the top all the way down to customer facing, and they're all working as a team, pulling it in on the same effort to bring the transformation to life. And that's really powerful with helping, especially the people that don't believe in it. So if they can see their colleagues getting on board with it, that does really, really help, rather than they start at the top and then cascade down. Let's take a cross-section of organisation and get them to drive the change.
Love it. So many awesome ideas. I can tell that we're going to need a session that's like 3 times as long as what we've got here. There's so much excellent content. I just want to draw Mia on your kind of digital, the exposure and experience you've had in kind of the digital sector specifically, just quickly, if that's okay. As Steph said, we've had this pace of change has really been unprecedented, both, and the impact of that on home and at work is really quite significant. And so I'm interested in, from your perspective, what impact you think that's had on the talent shortage and kind of skills gap in digital specifically, acknowledging that that's a key, business challenge for leaders in lots of organisations. What's been the impact there, do you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're fishing from the same talent pool as every other company that's transforming, right? So the game is on to get good talent and retain talent, right? Because the market is on the talent side of things. Employees today are looking elsewhere. Typically, I suppose, digital people specific, and I'm being a bit general here, but typically they will be, I guess, in the earlier phase of their career, just by virtue of the fact that that's a less mature industry, right? I mean, I'm probably an old timer in terms of digital, right? So what you tend to see, and you guys are the experts more around this than I am, but what you tend to see with younger people is that their expectations for longevity with one company are different anyway. So the idea of being more mobile and moving from organisation to organisation and building your career is second nature these days, right? Whereas when I was sort of initially working in my career, we just stayed a bit longer in places. So I think that's a shift in itself. Digital transformation, the last few years have been extremely busy, and obviously just through lockdown even more busier. Everyone's trying to do the same thing and fill those gaps really quickly that they had sitting there waiting to address. Everybody's trying to do that now. So we are experiencing, I'm sure, what most people are experiencing. We have got talent looking elsewhere, so talent within our business. We've got market rates are raising, so our typical expectations around salary are shifting in certain areas, and we're having to obviously internally rethink a little bit how we kind of position ourselves. But I think employee brand, and this goes back to some of the stuff we were talking about culture and behaviours. What is it that we offer as an organisation that isn't just about salary, and it isn't just about getting the job done? It's that whole context of what we can provide as leaders and teams, so that when people come and join BT, they feel that they can do transformation in a way that's going to positively benefit them in their career, and they're going to get something out of it that's more than just those sort of those typical benefits of working in an organisation like this. So I think there's definitely been a lot of thinking here about employee brand and how we build that up to offer that. So I think for me, there's a couple of really clear things that we do. Again, probably obvious to a lot of people. We have to work really hard at building talent from within. A lot of these skills are still relatively new to the world. So if I think about user research is absolutely central to a design process. If you don't know what users want, you can't possibly deliver it. And it's a skill, and there's a way of doing really good user research. So we're really keen to invest, like other companies, in those kind of areas. Data science, the ability to analyze and connect data to make really smart decisions. We're doing the same thing, right? So I think it's how do you build those skills from within? And luckily, working in an organisation where we have huge amount of resources around L&D, I feel really well supported. There's lots we can do there. How do you attract talent, as I said, building that employee brand and make this the place that you want to build your career with in those areas? And then how do we retain really good people, and I guess to some extent retrain where necessary to kind of steer them in the direction that we need them as a future skills. So there's a big future skills program at BT looking at a lot of those things, and obviously I get to partner as a team lead with those teams. But yeah, we are all over it. Is it easy? No, it's really hard, and we're definitely day to day dealing with the challenges of not having enough of the right skills of people in the right place, in the right volumes. I'd say we've got loads of amazing people, we just don't have enough of them.
It's really interesting, isn't it, that building skills from within, because you've got to have really deep pockets as an organisation if you're not going to do that, actually. And everything that people talk about in terms of the skills shortage shows that is really, there's an urgent need to do that. Tanya, just a slightly different question for you, I guess. We know that, leaders need to stay agile and be able to pivot when the pace of change is rapid. Just that digital skill shortage tells us that in a way. What do you think leaders can do to ensure they keep that sort of agility and they're able to, pivot when things are moving so fast? What did you see work well, I guess, last year, maybe?
So for me, and we've already touched on this, so I won't dwell on it, but it is about the shared purpose and value. So if you're constantly finding that you're going down one path and then take a left, no, take a right, then you need to keep in your mind, what is our North Star? What is the purpose of all of this? And I really think that helps enhance focus and cohesion within an organisation. The other big one, I was thinking about this last night for me, is psychological safety. It is so important at the moment with everything that we've been through with the pandemic, just personally. Yeah. And then, people have been furloughed, people are out of jobs, they're coming back to work, they've been working very, very differently. And when things start to get whatever the new normal is, they need to feel safe in their environment when they come back to work. And I think we need to create a culture. Organisations will be on to win if they create a culture where people are allowed to feel vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And I think they should be allowed to feel vulnerable, allowed to take risks, because I think you'll find that they will amaze you if you create a culture like that. Because they will perform at their best, because they're not always looking over their shoulder wondering, am I doing that right? Is that right? Should I go and speak to so-and-so? Should I ask for permission first? It's just, what? Let's, feel safe, get on with your job, enjoy it, be innovative, come up with new ideas, and really work hard as a team. And I bet you'll find that they will perform at their best. And I've already said it before, but again, it's about the trust thing. So really, really, when we go through change or something suddenly happens, what you find is some leaders, don't they? They suddenly go like this and just think, I've got the power, and I will do command and control, and I will tell you what we need to do. And I think that's such a shame, because you're missing a trick. I was reading an article about an organisation that had democratized their tech because there was so much digital innovation going on, and their organization was such that there was lots of levels of approval. And if you wanted to spend money, it took a while to get the approval. If you wanted to test something, I'm not too sure, you'd have to get loads of levels of approval again. And they just opened it up to the individuals and said, we need new apps, we need new types of digital innovation to engage with our customer. And so they took all of that red tape away and said, you write it. You make the app, you design it. You don't have to work in IT to do it. Get on board, get agile teams together and start to produce all this type of really great innovative work. So yeah, I think the trust thing is huge. So for me, it's psychological safety and culture of trust.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tanya. I think we could go on for another half an hour at this rate.
Easily.
Big topic, guests with lots to say, which is brilliant. So I think if I was to summarise some of our sort of key takeaways from this conversation, I suppose one of them is this whole thing about cultural readiness, but warming people up and having, positive intent and getting people on board with that. And time has to be invested into that. I thought it was a really pertinent point that Tanya made, that it might not be training, it might just be time to digest it and get on board with it. I think the other thing that's come up a number of times is the importance of that North Star and that shared purpose, that we all know the direction we're heading in and we buy into it and we all feel part of that as well is critical. And then I think there's something that always comes up around at the moment, diversity and inclusion, whether it's Mia's point around, the collective blindness and needing I think it was your words, where a diverse team is our superpower. But then also, how do we create for that diverse team, how do we create that psychologically safe environment so everyone can come and be themselves at work and feel 100% safe doing that? I'd love to come to each of you just for a final thought. So a final thought, first of all, from Tanya. What would be your closing comments?
So I've pinched a phrase from the CEO of Salesforce who said, change is not a solo sport. And I completely resonate with that. It's not. All the big things you see that get delivered in life, it's a team of people that do all these great things that happen. And I think what we need to remember is when we're going through transformational changes, you need to take people on a journey. And I feel quite passionate about this because I've seen so many times where if you don't, you waste energy and time and money trying to get to your North Star, and you can't because you're not communicating with people effectively. You're not bringing them into the fold and taking them with you. That would be my final thought.
Love it. And Mia, how about you? You're muted.
I had a train going by. I wish I had something really profound. I don't really. I guess when you think you've seen it all, you probably haven't. I've been through many rounds of transformation and thought I understood it and I kind of had my arms around it, and then something else happens. So remaining just flexible and know that Rome wasn't built in a day, right? Obviously, and it's going to take time to focus on the things you can control.
Brilliant. And Celine.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the last 30 minutes, and I think surprisingly what's come out for me is a bit of it's really resonated with why I came into occupational psychology originally. And I remember being struck as a teenager by the kind of power of organizations and the fact that we all spend most of our working life typically in an organization and at work. And I've loved the conversations here. We've been talking about our responsibility to look after people and care for them and acknowledge that there is this safety that we need to create. And so I just think it is our responsibility as people who work in organizations and who run organizations to look after people, because change, despite the fact that we've all done so much of it and we will continue to do so much of it, is scary for most people. So I think that's the really powerful thing for me. So it's really good conversation.
Brilliant. So a big thank you to Tanya and Mia for your thoughts today and for spending the time with us. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time for episode 10. And I have had a blank. I think it's leadership in safety critical roles, or is it
safety critical roles? Yes. Yeah, we've got a couple of really super exciting sectors speaking about what it means to be a leader when your life is on the line. So it could be a good conversation.
Brilliant. So see you all then. Thank you for listening today.
Thanks, everyone.